and welcome to Bookspot. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Citizen of the Galaxy by Robert Heinlein. Our protagonist Thorby has joined the crew of the trade ship Sisu, a crew which consists of a single family, a big, complicated family, and he's having some difficulty figuring it out. Fortunately for him, there is an anthropologist on board studying the crew, and she is offered to help him. Arranged by cased cards with photographs, the data Thorby had had trouble learning piecemeal he soaked up in half an hour, thanks to Baslam's training and Dr. Mader's orderliness. In addition, she had prepared a family tree for the Sisu. It was the first he had seen. His relatives did not need diagrams, they simply knew. She showed him his own place. The plus mark means that while you are in the direct sept, you were not born there. Here are a couple more transferred from collateral branches to sept, to put them into line of command, I suspect. You people call yourselves a family, but the grouping is a phratry. A what? A related group without a common ancestor which practices exogamy. That means marrying outside the group. The exogamy taboo holds, modified by rule of moiety. You know how the two moieties work? They take turns having the day's duty. Yes, but do you know why the starboard watch has more bachelors and the port watch more single women? I don't think so. Females adopted from other ships are in port moiety. Native bachelors are starboard. Every girl in your side must be exchanged, unless you can find a husband among the very few eligible men. You should have been adopted on this side, but that would have required a different foster father. See the names with the blue circle and cross? One of those girls is your future wife, unless you find a bride on another ship. Thorby felt dismayed at the thought. Do I have to? If you gain ship's rank to match your family rank, you'll have to carry a club to beat them off. It fretted him. Swamped with family, he felt more need for a third leg than he did for a wife. Most societies, she went on, practice both exogamy and endogamy. A man must marry outside his family, but inside his nation, race, religion, or some large group, and you free traders are no exception. You must cross to another moiety, but you can't marry fracky. But your rules produce an unusual setup. Each ship is a patrilocal matriarchy. A what? Patrilocal means that wives join their husbands' families. A matriarchy, well, who bosses this ship? Why, the captain. He does. Well, father listens to grandmother, but she is getting old and no buts. The chief officer is boss. It surprised me. I thought it must be just this ship, but it extends all through the people. Men do the trading, con the ship, and mind its power plant, but a woman is always boss. It makes sense within its framework. It makes your marriage customs tolerable. Thorby wished she would not keep referring to marriage. You haven't seen ships trade daughters. Girls leaving weep and wail and almost have to be dragged, but girls arriving have dried their tears and are ready to smile and flirt, eyes open for husbands. If a girl catches the right man and pushes him, someday she can be sovereign of an independent state. Until she leaves her native ship, she isn't anybody, which is why her tears dry quickly. But if men were boss, girl swapping would be slavery. As it is, it's a girl's big chance. Dr. Mader turned away from the chart. Human customs that help people live together are almost never planned, but they are useful or they don't survive. Thorby, you have been fretted about how to behave toward your relatives. I certainly have. What's the most important thing to a trader? Thorby thought. Why, the family. Everything depends on who you are in the family. Not at all. His ship. Well, when you say ship, you mean family, just backwards. If a trader becomes dissatisfied, where can he go? Space won't have him without a ship around him, nor can he imagine living on a planet among frackie. The idea is disgusting. His ship is his life. The air he breathes comes from the ship. Somehow he must learn to live in it. But the pressure of personalities is almost unbearable, and there is no way to get away from each other. Pressure could build up until somebody gets killed, or until the ship itself is destroyed. But humans devise ways to adjust to any conditions. You people lubricate with rituals, formalisms, set patterns of speech, obligatory actions and responses. When things grow difficult, you hide behind a pattern. That's why Fritz didn't stay angry. Huh? He couldn't. You had done something wrong, but the fact itself showed that you were ignorant. Fritz had momentarily forgotten. Then he remembered, and his anger disappeared. The people do not permit themselves to get angry with a child. Instead, they set him back on the proper path, unless he follows your complex customs as automatically as Fritz does. I think I see, Thorby sighed. But it isn't easy, because you weren't born to it. But you'll learn, and it will be no more effort than breathing, and is useful. Customs tell a man who he is, where he belongs, what he must do. Better illogical customs than none. Men cannot live together without them. From an anthropologist's view, justice is a search for workable customs. My other father, Baslam the Cripple, used to say the way to find justice is to deal fairly with other people and not worry about how they deal with you. Doesn't that fit what I said? I guess so. I think Baslam the Cripple would regard the people as just. She patted his shoulder. Never mind, Thorby. Do your best, and one day you'll marry one of those nice girls. You'll be happy. The prophecy did not cheer Thorby. Chapter 9. By the time Sisu approached Losian, Thorby had a battle station worthy of a man. His first assignment had been to assist in the central dressing station, an unnecessary job, but his background in mathematics got him promoted. He had been attending the ship's school. Baslam had given him a broad education, but this fact did not stand out to his instructors, since most of what they regarded as necessary, the Finnish language as they spoke it, the history of the people and of Sisu, trading customs, business practices, and export and import laws of many planets, hydroponics and the ship's economy, ship safety and damage control, were subjects that Baslam had not even touched. He had emphasized languages, science, mathematics, galactography, and history. The new subjects Thorby gobbled up with a speed possible only to one Renshaw by Baslam's strenuous methods. The traders needed applied mathematics, bookkeeping and accounting, astrogation, nucleonics for a hydrogen fusion-powered N-ship. Thorby splashed through the first. The second was hardly more difficult. But as for the third, the ship's schoolmaster was astounded that this ex-frackie had already studied multidimensional geometries. So he reported to the captain that they had a mathematical genius aboard. This was not true, but it got Thorby reassigned to the starboard fire control computer. The greatest hazard to trading ships is in the first and last legs of each jump, when a ship is below speed of light. It is theoretically possible to detect and intercept a ship going many times light speed, when it is irrational to the four-dimensional space of the senses. In practice, it is about as easy as hitting a particular raindrop with a bow and arrow during a storm at midnight. But it is feasible to hunt down a ship moving below light speed if the attacker is fast and the victim is a big lumbering freighter. The Sisu had acceleration of 100 standard gravities and used it all to cut down the hazard time. But a ship which speeds up by 1 kilometer per second each second will take 3.5 standard days to reach light speed. Half a week is a long, nervous time to wait. Doubling acceleration would have cut danger time by half and made the Sisu as agile as a raider, but it would have meant a hydrogen fission chamber 8 times as big with parallel increase in radiation shielding, auxiliary equipment, and paramagnetic capsule to contain the hydrogen reaction. The added mass would eliminate cargo capacity. Traders are working people. Even if there were no parasites preying on them, they could not afford to burn their profits in the inexorable workings of an exponential law of multidimensional physics. So, the Sisu had the best legs she could afford, but not long enough to outrun a ship unburdened by cargo. nor could Sisu maneuver easily. She had to go precisely in the right direction when she entered the trackless night of N space, else when she came out, she would be too far from market. Such a mistake could turn the ledger from black to red. Still more hampering, her skipper had to be prepared to cut power entirely or risk having his N-ship artificial gravity field destroyed, and thereby making strawberry jam of the family as soft bodies were suddenly exposed to 100 gravities. This is why a captain gets stomach ulcers. It isn't dickering for cargoes, figuring discounts and commissions, and trying to guess what goods will show the best return. It's not long jumps through the black. That is when he can relax and dandle babies. It is starting and ending a jump that kills him off, the long, aching hours when he may have to make a split-second decision involving the lives or freedom of his family. If raiders wished to destroy merchant ships, Sisu and her sisters would not have a chance. But the raider wants loot and slaves. It gains nothing simply to blast a ship. Merchantmen are limited by no qualms, and attacking ships' destruction is the ideal outcome. Atomic target seekers are dreadfully expensive, and using them up is rough on profit and loss, but there is no holding back if the computer says the target can be reached, whereas a raider will use destruction weapons only to save himself. His tactic is to blind the trader, burn out her instruments so that he can get close enough to paralyze everyone aboard, or failing that, kill without destroying ship and cargo. The trader runs if she can, fights if she must. But when she fights to kill. Whenever Sisu was below light speed, she listened with artificial senses to every disturbance in multispace, the whisper of N-space communications or the white roar of a ship boosting at many gravities. Data poured into the ship's astrogational analog, and the questions were, where is this other ship? What is its course, speed, acceleration? Can it catch us before we reach N-space? If the answers were threatening, digested data channeled into port and starboard fire control computers, and Sisu braced herself to fight. Ordnance men armed A-bomb target seekers caressed their sleek sides and muttered charms. The chief engineer unlocked the suicide switch, which could let the power plant become a hydrogen bomb of monstrous size, and prayed that in the final extremity he would have the courage to deliver his people into the shelter of death. The captain sounded the clangor calling the ship from watch to general quarters. Cooks switched off fires, auxiliary engineers closed down air circulation, farmers said goodbye to their green growing things and hurried to fighting stations, mothers with babies mustered, then strapped down and held those babies tightly. Then the waiting started. But not for Thorby, not for those assigned to fire control computers. Sweating into their straps for the next minutes or hours of life of Sisu is in their hands. The fire control computers, chewing with millisecond meditation data from the analog, decide whether or not torpedoes can reach the target, then offer 4 answers. Ballistic possible or impossible for projected conditions, yes or no for condition changed by one ship or the other, or both through cutting power. These answers automatic circuits could handle alone, but machines do not think. Half of each computer is designed to allow the operator to ask what the situation might be in the far future of 5 minutes from now, if variables change, and whether the target might be reached under such circumstances. Any variable can be shaded by human judgment. An intuitive projection by a human operator can save his ship, or lose it. A paralysis beam travels at light speed. Torpedoes never have time to get more than a few hundred kilometers per second. Yet it is possible for a raider to come within beaming range, have his pencil of paralyzing radiation on its way, and the trader to launch a target seeker before the beam strikes, and still be saved when the outlaw flames into atomic mist a little later. But if the operator is too eager by a few seconds or overly cautious by the same, he can lose his ship. Too eager, the missile will fail to reach target. Too cautious, it will never be launched. Seasoned oldsters are not good at these jobs. The perfect fire controlman is an adolescent, or young man or woman, fast in thought and action, confident with intuitive grasp of mathematical relations beyond rote and rule, and not afraid of the death he cannot yet imagine. The traders must always be alert for such youngsters. Thorby seemed to have the feel for mathematics. He might have the other talents for a job something like chess played under terrific pressure and a fast game of spatball. His mentor was Jerry Kingsolver, his nephew and roommate. Jerry was junior in family rank, but appeared to be older. He had called Thorby uncle outside the computer room. On the job, Thorby called him Starboard Senior Fire Controlman and added, Sir. During long weeks of the dive through dark toward Lausian, Jerry drilled Thorby. Thorby was supposed to be training for hydroponics, and Jerry was the supercargo's senior clerk, but the ship had plenty of farmers, and the supercargo's office was never very busy in space. Captain Krause directed Jerry to keep Thorby hard at it in the computer room. Since the ship remained at battle stations for half a week while boosting to light speed, each fighting station had 2 persons assigned watch and watch. Jerry's junior controlman was his younger sister, Mata. The computer had twin consoles, either of which could command by means of a selector switch. At general quarters, they sat side by side with Jerry controlling and Mata ready to take over. After a stiff course in what the machine could do, Jerry put Thorby at one console, Mata at the other, and fed them problems from the ship's control room. Each console recorded. It was possible to see what decisions each operator had made and how these compared with those made in battle, for the data were from records, real or threatened battles in the past. Shortly, Thorby became extremely irked. Mata was enormously better than he was. So he tried harder and got worse. While he sweated, trying to outguess a slave raider which had once been on Sisu's screens, he was painfully aware of a slender, dark, rather pretty girl beside him, her swift fingers making tiny adjustments among keys and knobs, changing a bias or modifying a vector, herself relaxed and unhurried. It was humiliating afterwards to find that his pace setter had saved the ship, while he had failed. Worse still, he was aware of her as a girl and did not know it. All he knew was that she made him uneasy. After one run, Jerry called from ship's control, "End of drill, stand by." He appeared shortly and examined their tapes, reading marks on sensitized paper as another might read print. He pursed his lips over Thorby's record. "Trainee, you fired 3 times, and not a one of your beasts got within 50,000 kilometers of the enemy. We don't mind the expense, it's merely grandmother's blood, but the object is to blast him, not scare him into a fit. You have to wait until you can hit." "I did my best." "Not good enough. Let's see yours, sis." The nickname irritated Thorby still more. Brother and sister were fond of each other and did not bother with titles. So Thorby had tried using their names and had been snubbed. He was trainee. They were senior controlman and junior controlman. There was nothing he could do. At least at drill, he was junior. For a week, Thorby addressed Jerry as foster ortho-nephew outside of drills, and Jerry had carefully addressed him by family title. Then Thorby decided it was silly and went back to calling him Jerry. But Jerry continued to call him trainee during drill, and so did Mata. Jerry looked over his sister's record and nodded. "Very nice, sis. You're within a second of post-analyzed optimum, and 3 seconds better than the shot that got that so-and-so. I have to admit that's sweet shooting, because the real run is my own. That raider off Ingstel, remember?" "I certainly do." She glanced at Thorby. Thorby felt disgusted. "It's not fair." He started hauling at safety belt buckles. Jerry looked surprised. "What, trainee?" "I said it's not fair. You send down a problem, I tackle it cold and get bawled out because I'm not perfect. But all she had to do is fiddle with controls to get an answer she already knows, to make me look cheap." Mata was looking stricken. Thorby headed for the door. I never asked for this. I'm going to the captain and ask for another job. Trainee! Thorby stopped. Jerry went on quietly. Sit down. When I'm through, you can see the captain if you think it's advisable. Thorby sat down. I've two things to say, Jerry continued coldly. First, he turned to his sister. Junior Controlman, did you know what problem this was when you were tracking? No, Senior Controlman. Have you worked it before? I don't think so. How was it you remembered it? What? Why, you said it was the raider off Ingstel. I'll never forget because the dinner afterwards, you sat with great-grandma, with the chief officer. Jerry turned to Thorby. You see, she tracked it cold as I had to when it happened, and she did even better than I did. I'm proud to have her as my junior tracker. For your information, Mr. Stupid Trainee, this engagement took place before the junior controlman became a trainee. She hasn't even run it in practice. She's just better at it than you are. All right, said Thorby sullenly. I'll probably never be any good. I said I wanted to quit. I'm talking. Nobody asks for this job. It's a headache. Nobody quits it either. After a while, the job quits him when post-analysis shows he's losing his touch. Maybe I'm beginning to. But I promise you this, you'll either learn or I will go to the captain and tell him you don't measure up. In the meantime, if I have any lip out of you, I'll haul you before the chief officer. He snapped, extra drill run, battle stations, cast loose your equipment. He left the room. Moments later, his voice reached them. Bogey, starboard computer room, report. The call to dinner sounded. Mata said gravely, starboard tracker manned, data showing, starting run. Her fingers started caressing keys. Thorby bent over his own controls. He wasn't hungry anyhow. For days, Thorby spoke with Jerry only formally. He saw Mata at drill or across the lounge at meals. He treated her with cold correctness and tried to do as well as she did. He could have seen her at other times. Young people associated freely in public places. She was taboo to him, both his niece and because they were of the same moiety, but that was no bar to social relations. Jerry he could not avoid. They ate at the same table, slept in the same room. But Thorby could and did throw up a barrier of formality. No one said anything. These things happened. Even Fritz pretended not to notice. But one afternoon, Thorby dropped into the lounge to see a story film with a Sargonese background. Thorby sat through it to pick it to pieces, but when it was over, he could not avoid noticing Mata because she walked over, stood in front of him, addressed him humbly as her uncle, and asked if he would care for a game of spatball before supper. He was about to refuse when he noticed her face. She was watching him with tragic eagerness. So he answered, Why, thanks, Mata. Works up an appetite. She broke into smiles. Good. I've got Ilsa holding a table. Let's. Thorby beat her 3 games and tied one, a remarkable score since she was female champion and was allowed only 1-point handicap when playing the male champion. But he did not think about it. He was enjoying himself. His performance picked up, partly through the grimness with which he worked, partly because he did have feeling for complex geometry, and partly because the beggar's boy had had his brain sharpened by an ancient discipline. Jerry never again compared aloud the performances of Mata and Thorby, and gave only brief comments on Thorby's results. Better, or coming along, and eventually, you're getting there. Thorby's morale soared. He loosened up and spent more time socially playing spatball with Mata rather frequently. Toward the end of Journey Through Darkness, they finished the last drill one morning, and Jerry called out, Stand easy, I'll be a few minutes. Thorby relaxed from pleasant strain, but after a moment he fidgeted. He had a hunch that he had been in tune with his instruments. Junior Controlman, do you suppose he would mind if I looked at my tape? I don't think so, Mata answered. I'll take it out, then it's my responsibility. I don't want to get you in trouble. You won't, Mata answered serenely. She reached back of Thorby's console, pulled out the strip record, blew on it to keep it from curling, and examined it. Then she pulled her own strip and compared the two. She looked at him gravely. That's a very good run, Thorby. It was the first time she had ever spoken his name. But Thorby hardly noticed. Really? You mean it? It's a very good run, Thorby. We both got hits, but yours is optimum, between possible and critical limit, whereas mine's too eager, see? Thorby could read strips only haltingly, but he was happy to take her word for it. Jerry came in, took both strips, looked at Thorby's, then looked more closely. I dug up the post analysis before I came down, he said. Yes, sir, said Thorby eagerly. I'll check it after chow, but it looks as if your mistake's canceled out. Mata said, Why, Bud, it's a perfect run, and you know it. Suppose it is, Jerry said. You wouldn't want our star pupil to get a swelled head, would you? Pooh. Right back at you, small and ugly sister. Let's go to chow. They went through a narrow passage into trunk corridor of second deck, where they walked abreast. Thorby gave a deep sigh. Trouble? His nephew asked. Not a bit. Thorby put an arm around each of them. Jerry, you and Mata are going to make a marksman out of me yet. It was the first time Thorby had addressed his teacher by name since the day he had received the scorching. But Jerry accepted his uncle's overture without stiffness. Don't get your hopes up, bunkmate. I think we've got it licked. He added, I see Great Aunt Tora is giving us her famous cold eye. If anybody wants my opinion, I think Sis can walk unassisted. I'm sure Great Aunt thinks so. Pooh to her, too, Mata said briskly. Thorby just made a perfect run. So, life aboard the ship is complicated and a little disciplined, but it's starting to look up. So we'll find out more about it next time.